This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
I actually have some errata from the last episode.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I have two pieces of errata. One is an update on the Montgomery Brawl. Because when we recorded it before, it had just happened. New facts have come out. I have a couple of corrections there. And then also we got some fan feedback about our units in our math, Everest.
I always show your units. God damn it. I'm such a math nerd, not a physics nerd.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
But we have fans who keep us on the straight and narrow. So, yeah. The Montgomery River Brawl, the context, the corrections are that the guy who got attacked was not a security guard for the dock. He was the literal co-captain, first mate of the ship that was being blocked by the pontoon people. So he wasn't just a guy doing his job. He was literally sent down there after 45 minutes of the captain asking over a PA for these people to please move out of his assigned berth so he could offload and then reload, his cargo of passengers on a cruise, because that's his job. And so he eventually sends down his second in command to deal with the situation after nearly an hour. So that is the main errata there. Is just everyone was assuming he was a security guard. He's not. He's the second in command of the boat that was being blocked. I'll throw a couple of references into the show notes for some context and interviews and stuff. But that's just the main errata there. Now to the important thing, which is Everest and our lack of getting the units right. Nate the Great in Discord and Jacob Passionate in Discord both messaged us to correct us on this. When we did our calculation, we did it in feet. We were using the number of meters and saying feet. So the math was correct, but the units were completely wrong. And as an Everest nerd, I should have known that it's 29,000 feet and that 8,848 shouldn't be followed by the word feet.
Don't do math live, even though it's not all technically live. You know what I mean. Do your notes ahead of time.
Yeah. Yes. Prepare your nerd facts ahead of time. Do your homework ahead of time. And so what all of that means is it works out to, we had calculated way too much, right? It was the actual distance is only a third of what we calculated. So it's approximately 32 miles between Tarvalin and Dragon Mount, according to that math. More like 51 kilometers, not 51 miles.
Right.
Units, they matter. This has been your lesson of the day.
They do matter. And that's the problem with going between an imperial fantasy world like America and metric units.
Correct.
Okay.
And the real world, like Randland. That's what you were going to finish that sentence, right?
So I also, in my effort to keep up with patrons better, I am. We have two new ones since last week when we thanked Donald and Rand. This week we have Soda Jerk. Thank you, Soda Jerk, and Lacey Johnson. So thank you for the two patrons who are continuing to support us as we make the podcast.
Thank you, Soda Jerk and Lacey Johnson. We appreciate you very much. And yes, TC Traveler in chat, there was a crash space probe because of units. A Mars orbiter, I think, smacked square into Mars because someone didn't change the system of units that they used to measure the distance to Mars. I believe that's what happened.
Mm-hmm. There's a reason your physics teacher yelled at you about showing your units, and you'd be like 5, and you'd be like, 5 what? And it felt so obnoxious in school, but it matters, especially when you're doing a podcast.
Yeah, I'd say it's the most critical mission of all, above even NASA.
Definitely.
Putting orbiters around Mars.
Hey, how about don't fight that?
Yeah, what is NASA doing with math? Whatever.
But yeah, today we are here to do a double header of chapters because I'm so done with this book. And to help us do that, we have got Morgan, Podcast the Dragon, who requested these chapters way back when for reasons that should become obvious as we dig into all their dark friendery nonsense.
Right. And 22 is super short. So 21 will take us a little while, but 22 will probably blast right through. But I'm excited that we're done with Winter's Heart. We are past the sloggiest part of Crossroads of Twilight, where we're basically everyone's reacting to the fact that the cleansing is happening. And now we're actually going to jump POVs every chapter or two instead of 4 or 5 chapters in one POV. So this to me is the downslope of Crossroads of Twilight. We are ready to prep for Knife of Dreams, is sort of setting up the beginning of Knife of Dreams, which is actually exciting again. So, and these chapters are great, by the way. Love them.
Yeah.
I had fun doing my notes.
Yeah.
There's nothing sloggy about these chapters for sure. This is heavy Dark Friendery, and then Pavara, which is totally a fan favorite. But I guess we just want to jump right. I don't know what to do if we're not starting with Winter's Heart anymore. Like, I've gotten so used to like opening up Winter's Heart and doing that passage that it's like suddenly we're on a diet with no dessert. We've eaten it all.
It's a double chapter. It's kind of the same, but
it's kind of
really
the same. Yeah, sure, go with it.
Yeah, Morgan, do you want to read us into a mark?
Sure thing. All right.
Got our Dark Friend Eyes to Die chapter header, because obviously.
Right. I would almost go as far as to say it's almost Alviarin's personal mark.
Basically,
right?
Yeah.
It's not... It definitely is used for other Black Aja members, but man, she gets it all the time.
Okay. Chapter 21. A mark. Alviarin stepped through the gateway, letting it snap shut behind her in a fading slash of brilliant blue-white, and almost immediately sneezed from the dust kicked up by her shoes. At once another sneeze racked her, and then another that brought tears to her eyes. Lit only by the glowing globe that floated in front of her, the rough-walled storeroom, hewn out of the bedrock 3 levels below the tower library, was empty except for centuries' worth of dust. She would much rather have returned straight to her apartments in the tower itself, but there was always the chance of walking in to find a servant cleaning, and then she would have to get rid of the body and hope that no one remembered that the servant had last been seen going into her rooms. Remain hidden and rouse not even the slightest hint of suspicion, Masana had commanded. That seemed over-timid when the Black Aja had walked the tower with impunity since its founding, but when one of the chosen commanded, only a fool disobeyed, at least if there was any chance of being found out.
That was a good read. Thank you.
That was.
Thank you.
So we're, 3 levels below the tower library, the quote-unquote abandoned part of the tower. I mean, the whole tower's abandoned, it feels like, at this point. When you've got half of an already decimated population of Aes Sedai gone. I mean, it's down to even a third, right? Because I think, you've basically got a third of them are rebels, a third of them are in the tower, and then you've got another third of the Aes Sedai that are just, like, chilling, being like, oh, that's heavy.
The wait and sees.
Yeah, the wait and sees. They're at the Silver Swan. That's why they keep coming and going. There's a whole group of them being like, damn, that's bad.
Yeah. Well, and also, like,
I'll have another glass of wine.
Library thing. Like, when I was working at a university library, I was such a go-getter that I ended up continually getting assigned, like, extra tasks that the floor managers didn't have time for. Because I was just like, please give me more work. Like, I'm desperate for more work. I never want to go home. I just want to work in this library forever and ever and ever. I would be one of those Browns that she mentions who has apartments over the library in addition to their own. Like, that would be me. Yes. And one of the tasks that they had me do was, like, dusting these old shelves that, like, literally it had been decades since anyone had touched some of these books. Like, I was taking out the old card, like, stampy things in the back where people used to stamp when they got the books out. There were books that had last been checked out in, like, the 60s because they were, like, philosophy books. And so I was, like, dusting the shelves and then taking every book out and pulling these cards out. And, like, it was a whole thing. And when Alviarin's down in this basement, I always liked these sections because libraries, obviously, but having done that job and, like, gone down to the basement level of the library to get more supplies, to go back up to the attic floor of the library to deal with these dusty things, it's just like, I love the abandoned parts of libraries. They're so cool. That's where she is. That's where she is. She hates it and she looks on it with disdain. But, like, I'm here to tell you all, it's very, very cool if you can stand the dust.
well, she's like, why do I have to go sneaking around? If I just run into somebody, I'll kill them. And like, chances are they'll be Black Ajah anyway. Jesus. You know, when the Black Ajah walked the tower with impunity since its founding, right? Like, and she knows every single Black sister. She's the only one who's like, yeah, it's a third of us. Like,
yeah, she's the only one that knows.
She's really the only one.
Her and Varen.
Yeah.
Her and Varen are the only ones that know the scope. And she doesn't know that Varen knows. So.
And Pavar's on her way to learning.
Yeah, yes, she is, unfortunately.
I really love Alviarin and her total, like, internal tone. And I feel like this is the chapter where Alviarin gets kind of like her comeuppance because she's spent books and books making Elida's life difficult, and I've relished in that because Elida sucks. And so I've really enjoyed that, but this like whole tone of her like resenting the little things that she does to be careful and then reminding herself of why. Like, it would be so much better to just like, you know, scrape all the dust away so I don't have to do this piddly little like lifting up every little footprint and, you know, making everything look perfect. But what if somebody comes down and wants to know why? And so she like talks herself down from all of her little resentments with her very logical white mind. But it seems like she's like all along hit this kind of breaking point of she's so over all of the bullshit that you have to go through to pretend like you're not evil and terrible. And I just appreciate that about her.
Yeah, no, I mean, she's been working harder than like any of the Chosen over the last however many years she's been in this position being a Dark Friend. Like, she's the one making the Black Ajah work, and then the Chosen show up and just start treating her like an errand girl, and they have all these cool toys and they aren't sharing, and it's like a glass ceiling, right?
Yeah.
Like, of course she's resentful and relatable. Just like, who among all of his readers haven't had some asshole boss take all the credit for all your hard work and refuse to advance you? Like, that's a very relatable thing, right?
I think of it like a CEO of a company, and then the board, who was, you know, totally absentee and off doing their thing, decides that they want to come in and start meddling. But the board, you know, is made up of 13 individuals who can't figure out exactly what they want to do with the company, and they're all pulling in different directions. Meanwhile, the CEO is going, I'm working my ass off to make all these things happen, but like, if you could just pick one direction and move with it, we would like absolutely be more effective as a group.
Yeah, no, everything's going to go down. All of their bullshit infighting is basically going to sink this company, and most of us are all going to get laid off, and they'll be fine, but the rest of us are fucked. That's basically what it's like. Yeah.
Right. And I don't like the severance package that's going to come with being laid off.
Yeah, because it's just severance.
It's just
of your head from your body.
Yes.
Yes, 100%. Not.
They might even sever you first.
Yeah.
Just for shits and giggles, because they're sadists.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So I've just always very much appreciated about everything about Alviarin. You know, even the fact that she's basically a garden variety psychopath in a world where all of the villains are larger than life, that makes her great as well. I'm like, she's kind of a basic, very, I always call her like pumpkin spice evil, and it works for her. Like, she's great.
Yeah, and she is what actually goes bump in the night in the real world. Like, she's walking through the alleys thinking, if I come across an inconvenient person, I'll just off them and deal with it. And like you said, you know, she's garden variety. Like, these people exist. Your spidey senses that make every person seem like a danger. One time in a million, this is the person who actually makes that true crime podcast a reality, you know?
Yeah, and because Elida is such an asshole, I really like Alviarin, because I like that Elida has someone like her to be shitty to her, you know? So
It reminds me of the Savannah Thrava relationship, where I just like, I hate both of them, but they deserve each other so much.
You like to watch them fight.
Yeah, you hate them both, but Savannah makes you glad that Thrava exists, you know?
Mm-hmm.
This is the reality television aspect of the Wheel of Time. We're watching these just like women go at each other in the back room, just being like, I told you not to go after those men in the Black Tower.
Yeah.
So Never's got me watching way too much Love Island and Married at First Sight and
oh no,
god, it's really bad stuff. I can't tell you just how much I enjoy having a phone in those situations. But you know, that's you can't be around that stuff for a while without being like, yeah, I mean, I really don't think she should get together with him because the way he talks about it, God damn it, it's in my head.
Yeah. No, it's nice that Robert Jordan was able to take these huge titans that are shaking the very fabric of reality itself and then pepper them through with like reality TV soap opera drama.
Yeah.
Like, again, he's a master of range in some ways. Not all of his ranges work, but some of his ranges really work. And I feel like, yeah, this is a real sprinkle of like American pop culture at the time he was writing. And he's like, I see where the winds are blowing. I see where this TV bullshit is going. Like
real Aes Sedai of the White Tower. I love it.
Yeah. Real Aes Sedai Rebel Edition.
Yes. Yes. Well, I don't think she should bond him. I mean, look at his swordplay. Ew.
All right. So we have a skit for
shit. I think Aradia's face just like lit up, like there should be like lights and everything right there. Jedi Pants likes that.
Notes are going to be taken.
Yeah, Marcus Sedai says you don't need to change the dialogue.
This could be fun. I'm gonna have to send a note to Kevin and Critter about this.
Brilliant.
I think there's a bunch of great quotes in this chapter. This one, but someone was always doing what no one ever did.
She often did herself.
I love that turn of phrase. Yeah.
Yeah, I also highlighted that. It's real fun. I like that line.
And there's a couple I'll talk about as we go through this chapter. I feel like Jordan was really like on his writing game the day he sat down to write Alviarin. He was like, yeah, well, what has Harriet always said? Jordan was at his best and had the most fun writing villains, right? He would really get into their head, and the way he would like, she'd be like, I could tell he'd been writing Padden Fane because he'd be all weird and different and creepy. And like, we don't see a lot of that in this book, but this chapter, I feel like he poured all of his creepiness into, and like obviously had a lot of fun with.
Yeah. This chapter is, once again, I feel like, Crossroads of Twilight is narratively the weakest book in the series, but it has some of the best writing, and this chapter is one of those examples. Not only just some of the best writing, but objectively probably one of the most terrifying moments of the entire series, where the first time I read it, I was legit like white-knuckled with horror while I read it. So, like, this book really does have a lot going for it. He just, like, shouldn't have done quite so much experimentation with it, and somebody should have been hitting his knuckles with the ruler and been like, no, you can't do that.
There should be some editing going on, yes.
But he's also on record as saying he regretted how he went about writing it, so it's like, live and learn.
We aren't making this up out of nowhere. Like, literally, the author agrees with us.
Yeah, he's like, yeah, it was a bit sloggy when I wrote it, and we're like,
nodding, yeah,
right.
I'm nodding. Yeah. But I mean, the guy experimented a little bit with a slightly different writing style, with a slightly different phase in his life.
It's book 10.
Yeah. in a 6-book series.
Yes.
And had health issues. And also, it's like the Wheel of Time is a very organic story. So yeah, a lot of that he did was deliberate, but a lot of it is also just something like living and breathing. And if anything, like, about things being organic or about biology lets you know, is that it's not always pretty and it's definitely not perfect, and so there's gonna be stuff that you look at and you're just like, what the fuck, and if you've ever looked at, a giraffe or anything where you're just kind of like, or just the fact that you're, breathing hole and the hole you eat with, how common it is to choke to death is not intelligent design. It's not like, or organic is not necessarily really smart or clean or well done all the time. So it's just like, it is what it is, but it's also amazing. And that's what I have to say about that.
And we're definitely finding some fruits in this weed patch, but this is certainly a weed patch.
Oh, yeah.
I guess having podcasted through the slog, I now really get driven nuts by people like, there's no slog. I'm like, yeah, there is. That's not a judgment on the quality of the slog.
No.
But it does exist as a different style and pacing.
No, it's just, I've laughed because it's sort of like in early episodes of your podcast, you're like, I don't think the slog is real. And now you're like, the slog is fucking real. And I so feel that because I've sort of like, I know that all have worked really hard on certain episodes and articulated opinions and think, I don't fucking believe everything that I just said. Or I put all the effort into putting all that out. And now I don't even think I believe it anymore. Spadoinkle, I have seen giraffes fight each other. It's awesome.
I actually watched a video from like PBS, I think, recently about how like there's a new idea about where giraffe necks come from, and it's actually the fighting and the sexual selection rather than the reaching. Because if you actually watch their browsing habits, height doesn't really seem to play into it a whole lot. It's the way they fight that seems to be where the necks come into unique play. So.
Yeah, new rule of thumb. If you see something weirdly outsized and out of proportion on an animal, chances are it's sexual selection, because we be freaky.
That should be the beginning hypothesis, and then the exceptions can be found from there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Margot, I would argue that it's not only okay to change your mind, but essential to be willing to. People who refuse to change their minds are not people I generally want to hang around with.
You know what? I was right about everything when I was 12, and I haven't changed my mind since.
Yeah.
That would be a miserable person to be around.
Those aren't people I generally like to talk to.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
Page 2 of the chapter.
Speaking of Missima.
Alviren walking through the library, thinking thoughts. I like how he, kind of leads it in because she's going to get this bomb dropped on her and she doesn't know what's happened.
And everybody else does, right? So, yeah, two things I really want to talk. One, what the hell was she doing in Tremalking? And as it turns out, the boar, which we find out in the next chapter. And two, just like how wonderful it is that she's walking through and everyone's like, ooh, you're about to walk into some shit. And like, she doesn't know that there's an army. She gatewayed in. She doesn't know there's an army surrounding this place. Like, that's how ignorant she is about what's going on and how things have changed. She's like, oh, surely Elida's been cowed. Nothing big could have changed in the last month.
She said nothing short of the army at the gates would change her plans. And so she shows up assuming that, of course, that wouldn't happen because only she knows traveling. And there's an army at the gates.
Jordan loves to do that.
Yeah. So I have two thoughts. I think with Tremalking, what happened, well, she didn't go to the boar. She went to Shadar Logoth. She went to the cleansing.
Oh, okay. I apologize. Okay.
And I think what happened is she went there first and she found the statuette because Cadsuane left the broken statuette. And if Alviren recognized what it was, she might have thought, I'm going to go check on the original. And because she had just gatewayed in, she would have easily been able to gateway out, pop over to Tremalking and see what happened to the original, and then see, the circles of dying people radiating out in a weird horror movie panning shot kind of thing.
It also sounds like she's been running errands for Masana because she's bitching about how these are tasks that she should be able to delegate to other dark friends, but she's not allowed to. So it sounds like she's been out doing a whole bunch of errands for the last month.
Yeah, that's what the dynamic is that she's managing Elida on a back burner while she does all this stuff for Masana, and she's like in this very like corporate grind set kind of like stuck between the two cogs, right? And yeah, she shows up and everyone's like, you have no idea what is going on, and you are toxic. Everyone is like backing away from her basically. She is politically radioactive as she walks up the tower.
And she has no idea. Completely over her head. Yeah, I like the idea that perhaps... So, okay, Masana, we know, didn't go to the cleansing.
That's why she's getting punished, right?
So maybe... Yes. So one would assume then that she sent Alviren to check it out because she was too scared.
No, because Alviren went to check it out and then is wondering if she can ask Masana about it. That wouldn't be the case if she was reporting to Masana about it.
Okay.
I mean, she could report, but not want to risk asking further questions. But
yeah,
I don't know.
And are we sure that this is why Masana's getting punished? I feel like there was confusion.
Yes.
Okay. We did clear this up.
I'm sure. I don't know.
I feel like I remember there being like debate about if she went to the cleansing or if she was summoned to something else and didn't show up.
No, they were specifically told that they'll know when to go, they'll feel the power being channeled, and so they're all to converge to stop it from happening, and she didn't show up.
I remember my faith in that being shaken at one point, so I just wanted to make sure I'm on solid ground. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so she's being punished for disobedience. But yeah, it makes sense that she would have sent, because it doesn't seem like she's real interested in leaving the tower. She just wants to stay there and chill and not go very many places. So sending Alviarin out to do her scouting for her makes sense. It didn't occur to me that that was what Alviarin had been doing, but maybe she went to Shattered Logoth and then on her own choice decided to go further to check out Tremalking, look around. But if she's been doing errands for Masana for about a month, then she's been taking care of a ton of different stuff, it sounds like.
You see, I just don't think that I believe that she was doing that for Masana at all. I think she was doing entirely human errands for Masana and did the whole field trip on her own initiative. I don't think Masana gave a shit.
That's always been my thought. So, I don't know. I think that it's possible either way.
Because Masana would have known what it was, right? She chose to not go. She has no desire to, like, what information would she get?
Yeah, yeah. That makes sense.
And Alviarin she takes the initiative. She wants to climb. That's why she's the head of the Black.
I just have to disagree because I think she's so pissed off that she has to go run these errands when she'd rather just be like tending the Elida thing, right? She's annoyed that Masana would not have bothered to keep Elida under control during her absence, right? It's like, it's not she wouldn't know to, or she didn't know I was leaving. It's like, she wouldn't have bothered keeping her under control, right? Like,
right, I think she was doing other errands for Masana that we just didn't see on screen.
So you think she's double dipping?
Yeah.
Yeah, she was doing that, and then she was taking the opportunity of being out of the tower to also sate her own curiosity.
Mm-hmm. But can we agree that when she was in Tremalking, she was checking out the statue of the female? That's where she went there. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
definitely. I can't imagine why she would have gone to Tremalking other than seeing the statuette and just wanting to test a theory, and then presumably seeing the mass suicide in progress and deciding not to help, right? Because she says she thinks to herself that, what would they say if they knew what was happening on Tremalking, the Seafolk sisters? Which means that, she could have stopped it, potentially, right? She's an Aes Sedai.
I
don't know if she could have stopped it. It's prophecy, yeah.
My point is, she arrived while it was happening, and Garden Variety Psychopath was just like, huh, and then walked away, right? Like, she is not doing anything about it. She's not responding to it. Like, but she saw it happening. She was watching people. She didn't arrive too late the way that, the sea folk who arrived did. Like, she was there days earlier, probably.
Yeah, and I think that her whole point of debating about whether or not to tell the Seafolk sister about it is simply out of a sense of being an asshole. If I told her about it, it would really upset her, but I can't tell her about it because then I have to, cover my tracks, basically. So it would just be something to torment her with shortly before she had to kill her, and then she realizes she can't kill her because all the Seafolk sisters are there because they hang out together, as you would.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the librarians especially are like, no, the creepy Aes Sedai who comes through on a regular basis, we don't trust that. We're not alone with that. No.
Well, and you got to figure that if you're basically sent off from your people unwillingly as part of a sacrifice so that the White Tower doesn't come and, pillage your people, that you would band together just, to try to keep your culture alive and comfort each other.
I mean, that or assimilate and never, ever acknowledge that you were that and not ever talk to people like that. But
I suppose, you could do that too.
But yeah, you're right. This does make more sense.
And just a note on timing. This is a month since the prologue of this book. In Crossroads of Twilight, there's a line that says Alviarin left a day or two ago.
Yeah.
And now here we are. She's been gone for a month. So we've had a month pass during the course of Crossroads of Twilight. But we know, like, of course, all the previous chapters were happening on the day of the cleansing. I don't know exactly. I can't remember. Was the prologue before the cleansing, or did the prologue happen?
It was before.
During the cleansing.
It happened before, and then the cleansing starts, I think, in chapter 2.
Yeah.
And then goes on for over the course of many chapters, and I think stops like the last one I came to guest on.
So the fact is, it's not. She didn't leave the tower because of the cleansing,
right? Because
she left before the cleansing started. So she had to have gone off to run some other errands, and only then, when the cleansing happened, went and investigated, then went to Tremalking. And she's returning from Tremalking now.
And the mud on her boots is from Tremalking.
You know, that was her last stop.
And she's debating about whether or not to ask Masana about the Surge of the One Power, but thinks to herself that sometimes, you know, it's you got to weigh whether or not to ask questions, because if she doesn't like your questions, then she'll punish you. And so it's like, you know, is it worth having your curiosity sated if she's going to zap you for it?
But for now, she's just thinking about how immortality is worth a little groveling as she hikes her ass up the tower, bemoaning the lack of elevators, which is a fun line.
She bemoans a whole bunch of stuff. She bemoans...
Yeah, she's complaining a lot.
Because Masana keeps, like, dripping... She's talking about, first of all, about wanting to talk to other Black sisters to get information, because the hint being dropped to her by the Sea Folk sisters about what a sad day, and for you especially, and how you have to, like, you know, leave notes on people's pillows. And she's like, perhaps some of those marvelous instruments from the Age of Legends that Masana talked about would allow her to question any sister immediately one day. I think it's like all of those Terangriel that are basically like cell phones, just all of the stuff that she drops, the little hints, and it just makes her more and more envious and dissatisfied with where she was at. So
we get to comment about the standing flows in this chapter too, which we'll talk about when we get there. That's
but lots of little Age of Legends tidbits.
Yeah, but bemoaning the elevators, and then up into Elida's tower high room.
And she's pissed. She's got to listen to other dark friends who aren't channelers, or like that. Just ridiculous to her. Just because Masana doesn't know who they might be serving, and Masana doesn't stand high. It's like she's so upset that she has to like listen to other people in the hierarchy. And that there's so many things she would like to say to Masana, but she wouldn't actually say any of them. Like, how many of us have gone into a meeting with our boss being like, oh man, there's so many things I want to say to my boss, but I'm not actually going to say any of them because I don't want to lose my head.
Except it's literal in this case.
Yeah, literal in this case.
And
mac and cheese.
Yeah, and she's having this sense of disquiet because she's trying to think of what they could be talking about, and she's fearful that maybe Elida is dead, and so that her amount of time is limited. And then feels a moment of relief when she walks in and sees that she has more than half the sitters of the hall standing in front of her table. But at the same time is also upset because Elida's not supposed to be entertaining such meetings without Alviarin present. So she's been
dun dun
not
dun.
Been dun dun dun.
Yeah, this is, and it's a small name salad. It's like a little like hors d'oeuvre of salad. It's like I actually took notes on them because there's only
it's just the sitters of the hall, right?
It's an actually pretty important name salad because it's kind of a setup for everything with once Egwene gets into the tower and how everything finally like works together to unfuck the situation.
Yeah. There's a lot of important players in this room, and it is actually worth going over them briefly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tasty name salad. It is a name salad, but there's much salad sauce on it.
But yeah, she gets told to go stand in the corner and shut up.
Yeah, which is really satisfying. The way that Elida is like...
Very satisfying.
Just takes command of the situation, and Alviarin just folds. Very satisfying.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, I've enjoyed everything that Alviarin's done to make Elida's life miserable, but at the same time, you know, it's not like I'm really on Alviarin's side, so it's nice to have it turn a little bit, at least a smidge.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of on Alviaran's side on this one. I think a lot. I kind of want Elida to suffer. I really hate her, but you know, they had to give her agency back before Egwene was captured, so that she could abuse Egwene, and it would be Dark Friends doing it. It would actually be Elida doing it.
Yeah, it's very important that handoff of responsibility go in a specific order for narrative purposes.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah,
I would argue that Elida has been so damaged by everything that's happened to her that plays into her decisions around Egwene, but like that's as much Pod and Fane as it is Alviaran, so.
Right.
She gets to go stand in the corner like a penitent novice, and she starts freaking out and trying to figure out what happened, why is she so emboldened, what's going on. And what's happening is we're getting the other side of it's the bomb that Delana thought she was dropping on Egwene when she's sort of like, hey, they want to negotiate, and she figured that would stir up terrible shit, and Egwene is like, good, like, negotiate.
Right.
Under these conditions.
And yeah, we're seeing how Elida has received it and is receiving it, and the conversation that's happening. We're dropping into that, but it's going as you would expect, which is you were explaining to me why I should enter negotiations. Like, this is what you would expect, right? We don't need a lot of backstory. You can just drop in the middle and pick it up on context clues with Alviaran.
And I also love both halves of that on, you know, Egwene's side, she's like, I have these requirements and I will not budge on those. And that's like Elida, you know, fucking off and the Blue Sisters being reinstated. And Elida is on the other side of that being like, absolutely not. There must be no Blue Aja. I need penance. I need this. I need that. And it's like, knowing both sides, there's no way these talks will ever come to any sort of conclusion because they've both been given hard stops that are way too far apart to ever come anywhere close to a compromise.
Or more that the talks will never go through unless they make Elida fuck off. And if everybody stands around and is like, actually, we have the best opportunity of making this work if Elida just fucks off, so that's probably best for everyone. Yeah, it does, Spadoinkle. It does sound familiar. But yeah, so Swana Dragan, who's the head of the Yellow, is like, we were not asking permission. A decision like this belongs with the Hall, and there's strong feeling in favor of it in the Yellow Aja. And Alviaran thinks that means that she has strong feeling because she feels like her feelings are everybody's. And that Dosine, who's the Black Aja hunter, the Yellow Sister, looks at her sideways, so obviously doesn't agree but doesn't say anything. And kind of important to introduce us to the heads of the Ajas in the tower, since they're the ones that kind of we find out eventually are behind the fact that the replacement sitters are all really young, and that the moles that are sent, that are Saladar's moles in their hall, that the heads of the Ajas are behind them, and they're all kind of in charge of working with Egwene, or at least they all get a favorable impression of Egwene, and so they all talk to each other and decide it's probably just for the best to her to be the Amyrlin, and so we start meeting them really right here. So we get Swana, and then we get, Farana, who's the White. And so, yeah, in Book 12, The Gathering Storm, I think it's RJ who wrote it because it sounds much more like Jordan's writing than Sanderson's writing. We get a whole bunch of great scenes of Egwene having interactions with, having lessons with Swana Dragan and with this White, the head of the White Aja, Farana, and stuff like that. So, but they're all telling Elida that, we're going to have these talks and we're just giving you a heads up, but not actually asking your permission.
Yeah. This collection of women is cool because some of them we've been introduced to and gotten to know quite a bit, and some of them are absolutely new, but will actually get a meaningful arc and we'll get a bunch of content with them later, and we will come to love them. So, like, on a reread, you're like, to some extent, I recognize all these names, some of them more than others, but, like, all of them have important things to do. And when I was looking them all up, like, most of them have satisfying conclusions. Most of them are actually accounted for. Like, they die or they do a thing after the last battle. Very few of them don't have a conclusive end. And only one of them's a dark friend, which is Talene.
Talene.
Yeah.
Yes. So as senior, Talene should have answered Elida. Green stuck to their hierarchies and everything, but the tall, golden-haired woman glanced at Yukiri for some reason, then just as oddly at Doacine, because she has already been found out as a black Aja, right? They have captured her. They have compelled her to swear the fourth oath. She has to obey them in all things. And that's why she's deferring, because she's already been called out. Because I knew she was black, but I was like, why is she obeying them? And I remembered, oh yeah, she's been co-opted. Yeah, her and the ferrets.
And this glance that she gives, Alviarin ends up clinging to that as a hope for her own salvation, which then freaks out Talene, which then has them like hide her, then she like runs away. Like there's a whole bunch of fallout from this glance. This glance is quite significant.
It totally is. But yeah. You have like the two heads. You have the head of the white and the head of the yellow, and then it's sort of like Siobhan says that she's been told that she needs to give that instruction that they're to go through the negotiations, because the head of the brown Aja is not a member of the hall. She's not a sitter, and the same is true for the head of the green, which is why, since Talene doesn't say anything, Rubinda is the second highest of the greens. So she says, I'm instructed to make the same points as Siobhan, meaning she doesn't agree with it at all, but that Adalorna, who is not a sitter but is the captain general, has been like, we're going to do negotiations. So all of the head of the Ajas are basically have been on the point of wanting to like take control from the Amerlin and the hall this whole time. They've been kind of in the background staging this like almost like a coup within a coup, I think, because everything is so fucked. Like nothing is working well, and they're sort of over it at this point.
Yeah. It's something that the Hall has to do now and then throughout the course of history, is just step in, and we're seeing that in action. Yeah, that the Aja heads are telling their sitters, basically, okay, you guys had a chance, and we're kind of not, we're doing this at this point. So I really like that. It's cool. And then, yeah, she gives her really unreasonable, her edicts, and says, okay, now fuck off. Yeah. So yeah, I just want to go through the sitters, because I did make notes, because I want us to all know how they live or die. So Suana is one of our Aes Sedai who's really early on confirmed to be not a dark friend. So we've actually been able to trust her for most of the series, which is cool. And she is the architect of the two young sitters conspiracy. She had a lot of help doing it, but she's the architect of it. And she really likes Egwene for the Yellow and for the Amerlin. And she lives through the last battle. Next, I've got Doacine, who's obviously our Black Aja hunter. She dies in the last battle. She makes it to the last battle, but dies there. Farana is present during the last battle and presumably lives. Andaya is the only one of the two young sitters who gets to retain her chair post-unification. She actually survives the reunification process, which is kind of cool. And she lives not present in the last battle. Yukiri, obviously a Black Aja hunter, she's one of the people who summons Cadsuane to be Amerlin at the end of the books. She lives and summons Cadsuane to the seat. So that's kind of fun. Siobhan is removed from her seat post-unification. She's a two young sitter, and she loses her seat. And she dies in Talairan Riyadh against the Black Aja. She dies in that whole like ambush gone awry battle of the tower in Talairan Riyadh. She dies in that. Talene is a dark friend, obviously. Rena? Why can't I read my own handwriting? She's a too young sitter. She's removed from her chair. She lives in the last battle.
She's Elias's Aes Sedai, too.
Oh, right. Yeah, okay. And Elias lives through the last battle, so that's good. They both have a chance to maybe get over their shit and figure it all out still. And then Rubinda is also an Aes Sedai who will summon Cadsuane to the seat at the very end. So we have two of the women who will pick the Amerlin after Egwene here in this room. Like, they've seen it all, and those are the women who will summon Cadsuane. So that's our rundown of the name salad. I hope you enjoyed that small little fiber bite with plenty of blue cheese.
Thank you, Aradia.
Morgan thanked me. I'm so happy.
Stinky ranch. Love it.
Why did you have to make it sound so unappetizing?
Blue cheese dressing?
Yeah.
Yeah, stinky ranch.
But is that not the best?
You're right, but
That's what it is. Stinky
Cheesy
ranch.
Traveler's like, isn't that contained in the rebel camp? It's blue. So yeah, Alviarin is learning about the fact that the rebels are here in this moment. It's really funny to imagine the looks that are passing across her face as this conversation is going down.
Right, because she can't let it be known that she's just learning this, because she has to oh, you were in the city the whole time, right? And she's like, no, but yes, because otherwise, I have traveling.
Yeah.
So she's got to hide the fact that she was ignorant, or else she'll have to reveal the fact that she knows more about traveling. It's a weird conundrum that I imagine being in the Black Oddjaw causes all the time.
Sure, yeah, for sure.
She was anticipating being able to have a story where she was out and about, or traveling via horseback or something like that, and now literally her only narrative is I was hiding in the city for a month, which is not a good narrative to have.
Yeah, it makes no sense. And why come back now? It's so ridiculous.
Yeah. And Elida's basically all of these things that you were holding over my head, I've had time to think about it, and none of them are actually going to do you any good. People are going to blame all of the, Aes Sedai swearing fealty to Rand on Koirin. They're going to blame all the shit show at the Black Tower onto Vayne. And so I'm going to do whatever I want, and I'm going to slap your face and send you to Sylviana to have her beat you 10 times as many times as you had her beat me, until I get all the evidence I need to have you attainted for treason. And all along, Elidas thought treason meant that Alviarin sent a love note to Rand, or had a treasonous correspondence with the Dragon Reborn. But Shane and Pavara took it as being she was looking for the Black Aja, and that's what Alviarin takes it for too, and she freaks out.
It's hilarious how Elida doesn't realize how what she's asking for is landing with literally everybody.
Yeah. That's typical boss, right? Out of touch, bad communication, all sorts of terrible things going on with the corporate world here in real time. White Tower. Yeah. I do love. So it's not just that Elida sits down and thinks about it. It's that everything that Alviarin was holding over her head has been found out by the Tower Aes Sedai, and they have assigned blame to somebody else. So now Alviarin, she was saying, I will reveal these things. Well, they've been revealed, and Elida faced no consequences whatsoever, because Alviarin didn't reveal them inside her framing of blaming Elida. These all just looked like a bunch of incompetent Aes Sedai that were sent off to do a task and did them poorly. And so Elida's just yeah, I'm good. You are going to blackmail me with these things, but the blackmail's out and nobody blames me. So it's, I don't know, it's almost a coming out moment for Elida, where she's like, that's right, I'm out, I'm incompetent, nobody cares, deal with it.
Elida Tefron do Avrinia Royan.
And she's and however it looks, the bottom line is the rebels can travel and showed up outside the city, and where the fuck were you? And nobody knows where you were.
Yeah, nowhere.
And I was I need my, so you look like an asshole, you're a disgrace, so what are you going to do about it? How about you fuck right off until I find what I need to get you killed? And so she freaks out.
And she fucks right off. Alviarin is even more brittle than Elida in the face of opposition. She crumples. Yeah. And I wish, okay, I don't wish, but I kind of wish that Elida had punched Alviarin at least once.
I was like, do you wish Alviarin had stabbed Elida? Because I kind of do, but apparently you're a nicer person than I am.
I wish Alviarin had thrown a few punches, and then Alviarin had stabbed her, and then it just became an all-out brawl, and when people arrived, both of them were dead. That's what I really wish had happened, but, the way that Alviarin doesn't get punched at the last minute just annoys me. I feel like Elida would have followed through with that, and it frustrates me that she didn't. I don't, but I do.
She already slapped her really hard. I don't know. I feel like she got her licks in.
I'm just like, punch her in the diaphragm. Make her fucking bend over, retching. Like, hurt her. Like, a slap is nothing. It's such a, like, I slapped you. Oh, her cheek is swollen. Like, there is so much rage in Elida, and she doesn't punch her at least once. It feels like a lost moment of catharsis. I'm a bad person.
That's okay.
I think it's because she's ruined her politically and she's happy with that. Like, she understands. Elida is never a person who herself necessarily gets physical. She sends you to the Mistress of the Novices to get punished. She doesn't punish you herself.
She draws back a fist and then doesn't use it.
No, yeah.
Emotional Blue Balls Part 2.
On that note, I'm going to get some more water. Should we get to the horror?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Alviarin gets back to her room, and I noticed the furnishings were still the Damani pieces left by the previous occupant. She's living in somebody else's room. Like, she never bothered.
She's living in Liana's room.
Yeah, she's living in Liana's room.
That's right. Liana. Oh, Jesus. Of course. How could I even forget that?
She just took over Liana's room, her clothes, her art, her makeup, her everything that she got stripped of when she lost her position. She just moved in and started using it.
It's tacky as fuck, honestly. It's like...
It's gross.
The previous occupant. Of course. I can't believe she just didn't say.
Because she just fucking throws people away like trash because she's a garden variety psychopath.
Right.
Yeah. She doesn't have a name. Yeah, exactly. Pants says she can hear the scorn in her thought. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Such a good bit of writing by Jordan.
It's like, oh, that bitch who was here before me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for real.
And then, yeah, she gets out her emergency cell phone, basically.
Red Rod Terangrial?
But it's only
like, we have a second Red Rod.
With like,
yeah, but it's like a finger-sized Red Rod, which
is a pager.
Yeah. It's a tiny little pager.
Yeah.
And you just hit the panic. It's a panic button. It's basically a panic button.
And reading this, I had a bit of a epiphany. Because she puts thin flows of fire and earth with two interconnections. And in the Age of Legends, she calls that a standing flow. Well, what is power to our houses but electricity, which is fire, that then goes to ground, right?
Yes.
By putting fire and ground, essentially what you're doing is you're creating a voltage difference. This thing runs on voltage. It's an electric terangrial. The fire is just electricity. And then ground just grounds out the electricity and completes a circuit. And the standing flows were just power lines. One had ground and one had fire on it.
Right, and it's magic, so they didn't have the same like physical infrastructure architecture we would recognize, but that's all semantics.
Right.
It's
our science is magic to people from 1,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm. So does this mean that they don't understand the power correctly, and what they call fire is actually a far more complex like amalgamation of forces?
Yeah, well, it's just it's a concentration of force, right? Heat, plasma, whatever you want to call it, or electricity. You know, it's a voltage difference.
Yeah, I like it. I like it so much. And yeah, basically what she's doing is just like making a potato clock, real quick.
Yeah.
An emergency potato clock.
She is the potato. She is the potato in this situation.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's essentially what someone from the Age of Legends would be like. Okay, so you're plugging my alarm clock into a potato and you're making it work. I mean, I guess, right? Like, I guess,
yeah. If you don't have the standing of flows, work with what you got. Yeah, because I have conceptual understandings of that type of stuff, but it's just sort of like my math and my science is all wishy-washy, so like having that explained to me though, thank you.
Yeah, this is very excellent. I love it.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I mean, yeah, it's Jordan clearly was just like, hey, look, electricity with new terminology. How will I invent that? That's one of my favorite genres of sort of magic systems when you like read a whole story and they're like, and this magic screen so there was an example in Sanderson's latest, not his latest, but one of his secret projects, where there's a tablet with a screen that translates. And it's like all this magical stuff, and you're like, wait a minute, that's just
it's just doing closed captioning.
It's just doing closed captions. Our phones do that all the time. Yeah, so it's just I think that it's really clever to read a whole book and realize you're reading it from their perspective, but seeing something very familiar to you. And when you make that click, all of a sudden your mind changes. Sort of Shannara and the Shannara series is really, really good for that, because that is post-apocalyptic. There was a nuclear war. The radiation created, dwarves and elves and all the other people, kinds of people out of regular people, and then magic happened because of anyway. There's a bunch of stuff in that series that the characters use and encounter that you only realize later is robots and technology. And if you're not reading carefully, it feels like a magic system, and you're like, oh no, those are just leftover robots from the pre-apocalyptic worlds. That was our world for sure, 100%.
I adore that edge between fantasy and speculative fiction. That's one of my favorite specific genre overlap spaces. It's just so tasty. But I'm not going to go on a 20-minute rant about all the books that I like that are in that, because we need to get through this chapter.
Masana shows up in disguise, and it's sort of like, I told you not to piss Elida off. I'm not getting you your job back. You can do whatever you want, or you can do the things I need you to do, even if you're not the keeper anymore. Sucks to suck.
Which is, again, like, it's evil on evil, but you do love to see it. Like, the sucks to suck energy is it's fun. So
this also, again, the corporate world and the White Tower and the Dark Friend, the Black Oddjaw going on in the background just have a great parallel, because this very much feels like a middle manager fucking up and trying to pin the blame on the worker and being like, listen, you fucked up. And she's like, I did what you told me to do. I know, but you didn't do it right. And now we've got a problem. And then the CEO walks in and goes, actually, the problem here was the management, not the work.
It's not just the CEO. This is like Undercover Boss.
Oh, I don't know. When he says, I'm the you think the Hand of the Shadow is just a name? That's not very undercover, is it?
Well, not anymore at that point.
No. The moment of that unveiling of like, and the way that Kate reads it in the book is just terror to the heart of to my heart of hearts, ice in my bones. It's so scary, and reading it in print and having that neural pathway in my brain is just like, whew.
I remember being white-knuckle horrified when I read this the first few times I read it, but especially the first time, where I was just like, wait, what? And then just like, because he, his empathy for his characters, even for an asshole like Alviarn, is so intense that you're so caught up in her terror, and he's so good at it that, you're legit terrified because she's legit so terrified, and he portrays that so well. And it's just, it's some of the best writing he does in the whole series is in this last bit of chapter, and the best horror because it's fucking awful. So, yeah.
Yeah. And he set it up so well over the course of making the Dark Front, making the Dark One super scary but ephemeral, and then making the Murdral really scary, and then like down-powering the Murdral basically, and making it so that Rand can take out a bazillion Murdral at once, and it's fine. And then there's this one special Murdral, and then the Dark One's getting more personality and getting more involved. And then the two merge, and now the Dark One is walking around in the body of a super Murdral. It's just like he has world built you for 10 books to understand at a really fundamental level the world building horror of this. And then like the writing's good, but like he needed 10 books to get you to understand why this is so horrifying. I think if you just read this as a short story standalone chapter, it would be good writing, but it wouldn't chill you.
It wouldn't be the same.
Well, and this paragraph so actually confirms foreshadowing in the Great Hunt when we see that motherfucking Murdral smile. And we were able to go, that is the Dark One. That is Shadar Haran. He's not as tall yet. But, you know, like this paragraph here, lurks were as alike as two raindrops, tall and lean and identical. But this one stood a head taller, and fear seemed to radiate from it, soaking into her bones. Unthinking, she reached for the source and nearly screamed. The source was gone. She was not shielded. There was simply nothing there for her to embrace. The Murdral looked at her and smiled. Lurks never smiled. Never. So there's three things going on there. We've got the taller than normal Murdral, the Murdral that smiles, and the complete absence of the one power, the source. And those are things we've seen independently with the Dark One and Shadar Haran, but never together in one spot, right? We've never seen... I don't... see, now I'm questioning myself. The source has been cut off from them with Shadar Haran around, but I think it was in the bore.
Yeah, yeah. I think in the vacuole, or was it only in the bore?
Yeah, in the vacuole. No,
yeah.
You're right.
But then part of her getting returned to Moradin is she's now in a normal space where she's able to sense the source again.
In the prologue of Lord of Chaos, when we're in Osingar's head, and we get the first POV of someone who's been transmigrated into a new body, and he's like, you know, can't find the source, and Shadar Haran's like, you haven't been severed, but you won't channel around me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that, I think, is the Dark One being able to cut him off at the bore, and now he's obviously much more free and is able to extend out his hand and use his hand to cut someone off from the source.
He can actually exist in his hand for a brief period of time. Maybe not perpetually, but for long enough to really screw with someone for a conversation for an hour. Like, he's able to be incorporate, corporal. This is wrong. This is so wrong.
And we got that POV from Shadar Haran where he's watching and he says, oh, he feels a weakness. That must be remedied soon. He must cut off that link to Shadar Logoth. And that's the Dark One talking about being freed, basically.
Not to Shadar Logoth, to the
Sheol-Gul.
Sheol-Gul.
Sorry. Yeah. Sheol-Gul.
Yeah. And so at this point, do you think that has been cut, or is that the...
No,
it's just more strong than it was.
It's weakening. Yeah, as long as the seals are intact, he will be bound somewhat to Sheol-Gul. And we know there are still 3 seals intact.
But he's stronger than he was. And I suspect he's getting taller as he gets stronger. I bet, like, centimeter by centimeter.
Yes.
He's getting a little bigger.
Well, we know, I mean, Jordan, his height and power level thing always go together, right? The taller you are, the stronger you are, especially with men and the Dark One. And then there's that added thing of when you pass through the tunnel to visit the Dark One, your headspace matters, right? He can shrink the tunnel to make you crawl, or he can grow it if he shows respect. Right. And that even comes back to Rand. When Rand walks through, he refuses to let the tunnel close on him because he's that powerful. In the same way that you know, the Amyrlin seat, her chair matters as a representation of power and stability and political power. Jordan uses height for men to show power, which, you know, OK, fine. It's surprisingly, again, corporate world appropriate.
I in my current episode went on a rant, like a fuck you rant about Melindra, talking about how Matt's cute for, like, whatever, cool for such a short guy, and it's like, fuck you, Melindra.
That's just the Aiel being like having their sense of proportion just way out of whack about what's tall and what's not.
But my point being, you know, it's like short men are attractive, and giving them a complex about it is bullshit, because being tall is not the be all and end all.
But it is interesting that most authors are not just white men, but tall white men. Sanderson, Jordan, Martin, Rothfuss, these are all very, very, very tall men who for some reason get their work looked at and published more than other people.
I'm sure it's just because of their raw talent, pure meritocracy.
Just a coincidence. Yep. Yep. Not that I'm bitter about tall men having power over me or anything. I've got all the rest of the characteristics of a powerful member of society, but I'm not tall enough. So
should we call you Samael?
Please. Just Sam. Sam works. Sam I am.
Dear.
Do we have to talk about Masana getting stripped naked?
I mean, we have to claim it's another one of Jordan's rape setups, right? Like,
it's one of the most overt rapes that we've got. He's got a fucking ball gag involved, and we're using rape as punishment to women.
And I was so fucking naive when I first read it that I didn't even realize what was happening, because I guess I was lucky enough to be that stupid. Unfortunately, that didn't last.
Do you want to watch?
That?
Yes.
I like it as a final piece of the horror. I absolutely detest everything about do you want to watch? Like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's fucking horrifying, but it's like, it makes me feel sympathy for Alviarin because she's so obviously fucked up by the whole thing and absolutely horrified and just like, yeah, needs to go, almost falls down the stairs as she runs. And yeah, it's I remember finding it just an absolutely, even being too stupid and naive to really understand the scene, finding it absolutely like white knuckle and gut wrenching. Because yeah, it's fucking horrifying.
Yeah, it's a very, very ominous fade to black kind of situation. Door slam to black.
Door slam to black.
So before we get to that, there's two things I did want to talk about. One, the comment, "You're always ... overly wasteful." What the hell is Shadar Haran talking about when he says Masana, this like almost school person, right? Who she runs organizations. She created, the children of
Masana's
the dark.
children.
You're like Masana's children. Like, what is it about her that's in any way wasteful? That is not the word I would use to describe Masana.
She doesn't recycle.
Oh, yeah. Well, clearly, as Oregonians, we can recognize someone who does not separate their recyclables at a mile.
Clearly, yes. Right.
I always interpret it as she was overly willing to kill people who didn't serve her ends or got in the way. And as an administrator, she had a very, maybe kind of Nazi level efficiency to just deciding who did and didn't fit in her regimes and just tossing them aside when they were still usable by the regime.
As opposed to Lanfear, who will cut someone's head off who's just in front of her in the way. I guess she is responding to the summons, though, so...
And Lanfear only deals with individuals. Masana deals with systems. She could off 1 million people with the stroke of her pen because they got in the way. I mean, for all you Fifth Element fans, like, 1 million layoffs, sir. Sorry to have bothered you, sir. Like...
Yeah, make it 2 million. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's a fair point. Since she's such a bureaucrat, like, Lanfear moves out in the world as an individual person. And so, yeah, she's pretty wasteful, but she'll waste a lot less as a single person than a casually wasteful bureaucrat who would rather just get rid of people or systems rather than, like, adapt them or try to make them work.
And what does that say about the Dark One, right? We know he doesn't throw away tools, right? If something's useful, he will always find a use for it, right? He's not... The worst thing you can be in the Dark One's eyes is not useful, like Agonor.
I would think it was almost an understanding of, like... what like energy requirements, if you're going to get rid of someone who has, capacity of skills and knowledge and resources that Alviarin has, you have to find other people, train them, like Alviarin is the type of person where you literally cannot replace her. You can't replace her knowledge. You can't replace her capabilities. So getting rid of her is insane. And someone like Masana who will just casually do that, and then because she's an administrator, expect her underlings to find something to fill the gap and then be angry when they don't, and then strike out at them or waste or destroy or kill whoever, is not doing what she needs them to do to unfuck what she ruined in the first place. Yeah, she's like the worst type of boss. So yeah, I can see that. I feel like at an almost basic, like, physical force or, force of the universe, the Dark One would understand, you've got to, like path of least resistance, you don't waste because it takes more energy and you don't want to do that. So at least that's what I see.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then I guess the other thing I want to think about is the fact that Masana lost her disguise there for a second. And Alviarin said her face was familiar, but she couldn't place it. So, and it doesn't have any agelessness on it. So, do we think that's... We know Masana's disguised as Danelle, right? Danelle. Do we think she is using her actual face to be Danelle? Or do you think she's just using a mask of mirrors to look like Danelle, and with agelessness and everything?
If you read the backstory, it says that she looks enough like Danelle, and Danelle basically had no friends and hardly ever came to the tower, so nobody really noticed the difference. So I'm assuming that she uses some manner of weave to mimic the agelessness. If it was Jordan's intent that Masana be Danelle, and that wasn't a Sanderson's choice of trying to decide who was Masana, I guess it'll be Danelle.
I feel like there's enough clues about Danelle being Masana early on the reread that I am 100%.
I agree with that. Like, breaking down the prologue of book 5 and the amount of characters where you're in Elida's study and he's paying attention to different minor Aes Sedai through her point of view, and the amount of attention he pays to different Aes Sedai that have minor arcs, like Teslan and Jolene and Shamaran. He pays as much attention as far as references in Elida's head and like dialogue bits and stuff to Danelle as he does to Teslan and Jolene and Shamaran. And since they all have minor stories, I feel like Danelle must have been Masana. She had to have had some other story going on for her that would have been cleared up, or he wouldn't have paid as much attention to her.
And there was so much with the rebellion and taking down Suon, and Danelle was key in that. And there was something else I don't remember that I thought was a clue. But anyway, I'm not sure what the original point was. Oh, just that Masana is seeing, I believe, her actual face, and if she was better at recognizing people without the Aes Sedai agelessness, she would have immediately known who it was, and that would have spoiled it for us, I think.
I think Alviarin would have recognized her normally because she should know Danelle. Like, she was involved in the coup. She was the one in charge of the mercenaries disguised as Masons. But if she doesn't have, like, whatever weave she uses to make her face agelessness, considering she's in a moment of, like, absolute fear and horror in her mind, absolutely frozen like that, I can see... If it's not something that she interacts with a lot, and she interacts with a ton of different Aes Sedai, and Danelle is someone who's not that important, she wouldn't necessarily focus on her too much, especially if she's not someone she sees as a tool. If she's not like a ready-to-hand tool, she's probably not someone. And she's not a dark friend, she's not going to be someone that Alviarin keeps like ready to hand. And so she'd have to think real hard. And without the ageless face as well, then she's not going to immediately, in that state of terror, automatically be like, that's Danelle.
Yeah, I'm nodding to all of that.
So then the Great Lord marks Alviarin as his, right? Which is a measure of protection. I also kind of think that's what being Forsaken or chosen is. You're chosen to be one of the Dark Ones marked.
And it's how Rand sees Dark Friends later, people who are truly sworn. It's a sooty mark on the forehead.
Right.
I think Fane even says he can tell Dark Friends. It's like a sooty mark on the forehead. Like, yeah, this is that mark somehow. It's how the Dark One chooses people. I think you're super right to hear the potential capital C on that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I always thought with this scene that Alviarin was going to become one of the new chosen, that we'd have a whole crop of these new chosen that would spring up, and Alviarin would be one of them, right? Because, you know, she seems to be doing better than Masana, right? Teach her some of teach her some Age of Legends weaves and like make her the new Masana replacement. Same thing with Taim, right? I thought that was a good idea. I just don't like how special they made Taim. I think we could have had more modern day chosen Forsaken who were secretly being taught Age of Legends weaves, and they would have busted them out at the last battle. I think that would have been cool to have the new, because we've got the New Age heroes, right? So the New Age Forsaken, especially after seeing the incompetence of the Old Age Forsaken, right? It would have been really cool to the Dark One to be like, so y'all have, with a few exceptions, like Demandred and Moradin over here, the rest of you are incompetent. So I got a new batch, because we know they're not unique.
Yeah, even just 3 of them to be able to have an alliance, to go in and say, yeah, we're all equal. And then the 3 New Age Aes Sedai are like, or New Age Chosen are like, so like, we trust each other more than the other guys, right? Yeah. Like, it would have been, there could have been so much more drama. We could have had so many more books of people smoothing their skirts. It would have been amazing.
But yeah, okay, so who will be the third? Alviarin, Taim. Who's the third modern day chosen / Forsaken?
That's a good question.
Well, I mean, it can't be Galena because she ended in a pretty undignified way, and Leandra didn't do much better.
And it can't be Cheyenne because Cheyenne can't channel.
So I'm thinking about going outside of the White Tower, right? Like one of a wise one channeler who it like got turned, or
Tharava.
Perhaps a sea folk, one of the sea folk.
Tharava's terrifying.
Yeah, Tharava.
Yeah, Tharava would be great if she were a dark friend.
Yeah, she's not a dark friend, so that's. Yeah, we need of who is canonically a channeler and a dark friend. Who would make our third?
You know, it's funny, there aren't a lot of dark friends outside of the White Tower who channel, right? The wise ones have effectively
they don't have a good recruiting streak.
Through their
it has to be an Aes Sedai,
Yeah.
basically, which sort of limits the pool a little bit.
I was thinking a Damani, a free Damani.
Oh, like someone like Olivia, but like her heart twists the other direction.
Exactly, right? The revenge, the like, oh, they abused me for 400 years. Now I want revenge on everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. Or, I mean, there's the entire world of Sharan channelers.
Right. I'm kind of ignoring them, but...
I mean, that would be another way to even be like, yeah, we don't know you, but we were all born within the last 40 years, so like, right.
Right. You could see a real, like, an Aiel, a Sea Folk, a White Tower, a Black Tower, a Sharan, you know, like, you could really pull from a lot of different locations.
Yeah, making Taim special and unique was a miss.
Yes, agreed.
He could have been a really cool icebreaker into a whole new level of threat, but to have it just end there is, like, meh.
Oh, the kin, when they're discovered, and you've got one who, like, was a runaway and doesn't want to go back to the White Tower, so she turns to the dark because the kin is no longer a place for her.
Oh, that's a good one.
And she wouldn't have been a powerful enough channeler. The kin were inherently all weak.
Some of them are.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, no, she was a runaway, not a failed out one. Yeah, she was super powerful and old, and...
I mean, hell, why not Nicola?
Nicola, she'd be perfect.
That would be a betrayal.
She, like, wants to learn the new knowledge, so she goes out and finds...
She's not even 20 years old, and she ascends to being a Forsaken.
So a Millie Skane type personality without the...
Yeah, I put my vote in for her. Yeah. I felt like, I mean, her redemption was great and everything, but I like her having, like, an evil arc instead of a redemption one just as well, if not better.
Yeah, a corruption arc would have been way more fun.
Totally.
Where she goes from, like, just wanting to, like, learn a little bit more to, like, a fully committed dark friend. Like, that would have been awesome.
That is one thing. There's not a lot of redemption or corruption arcs. People either are inherently good or inherently evil. We don't see, unlike in the Age of Legends, where we see a lot of people transition from being good. Oh, the Dark One comes out. Guess what? I actually prefer that. Now I'm going to be evil. We don't really see that in Age of Legends. I feel like anyone who could have been evil has had plenty of chances to turn evil, right? So, yeah, I don't really see a lot of that in the Third Age.
Well, I think that the Forsaken are just the people who were at the Boar in order to be able to be sealed in. I think there were plenty of other quote-unquote chosen. They just died. So I don't feel like the ones that came, you know, that we know are really that much more special than the rest of them. They're just the ones that lived and were, you know, cemented into infamy because they got preserved.
I mean, the legend does say he summoned his 13 most powerful chosen. So at the time, they were supposedly the top of the game, right?
Okay.
He had some to pick from.
Yeah.
Is the takeaway I'm getting. I think that what he was doing with Alviarin was sort of flagging her as, like, potentially a good one for making chosen later, and just never got to follow up with her on it. Like, that was kind of how I interpreted it. It's like, that's where this could have gone, but for some reason we're not going to do it. Because I don't know what else the mark is supposed to be for. Like, yeah, it's protection, kinda, but, like, he doesn't give protection for nothing. He's like the mafia.
So anyway, this is basically what makes her a
Dreadlord.
Dreadlord, thank you.
Yeah, she does end up leading a strike force of channelers and being quite a nuisance during the last battle. It takes like a whole bunch of Sanderson writing and characters from the Black Tower to get rid of her and her cohort.
Yeah, they trap them in a steading, I think.
Yeah, they're the ones that are trapped to hang out with Ogier forever, being evil and cut off from the power and cut off from their evilness and just being read to.
Super Skylake is saying that the mark is definitely an analogy for the mark God puts on Cain in the Bible. That like sooty mark on the forehead. It also reminds me a lot of Ash Wednesday, right? Like the mark, I mean, I'm sure it's totally different, but to me, that mark of the priest putting the ash cross on your forehead feels very much like the Dark Lord putting the thumbprint on Alviarin's head.
Being blessed by the darkest of dark popes. The most evil negation of all that the Pope could possibly have ever stood for in the most idealized version of popedom.
Right. Sort of an inversion of that process, yeah.
He was like, 666.
Yeah. Mark of the Beast and people just barcoding them like, chink. Alviarin is very disturbed by the whole experience. Did not consent to that. Feels fairly violated by the whole thing, and is basically distracted by it for the rest of the time that we ever see her. She's like fingering the mark on her forehead and like pulling her hands back down, and it really weighs on her mind for chapters after this.
Yeah. Any POVs that we get from her from then on, she's kind of not confident anymore, and she's constantly like thinking about how she's been marked, and it's almost like, her pumpkin, it's like somebody poured booze in her pumpkin spice evil, and it wasn't what she was here for, and that was not what she signed up.
She's on a high that is lasting way too long, and she is ready to come down.
She's like, it was a work day, and she wasn't here for it, and and then Sanderson doesn't write POVs from her, and he just kind of uses her in battle mode, and it's sort of like, it's fine how he uses her.
She could be any generic Dreadlord. Yeah,
you're in Miss Shrila's head or something. You're in some kind of Dark Front Ashamon's head who doesn't like her, which is like, fine, why would you like her? She's obnoxious and condescending, and you don't ever get the internal lack of confidence narrative, and I think that's good, because I don't think Brandon would have nailed it right. So
Brandon does much more describing what's happening externally, and Jordan, I feel like, spends a lot more time in people's heads describing what's happening emotionally.
And with dresses.
But that's all gotten emotional. Like the reason he describes dresses is because that is a translation for the emotional state, especially in Teleron Riyadh. Like people are like, oh, it's a book about dresses and physical characteristics. I'm like, yeah, but translating that, it's about emotions and what you're perceiving in other people.
But my neckline will tell you how horny I am.
Yes, it will. Excuse me while I... Just gonna go ahead and leave that there. The shirt doesn't stretch any further, so...
Well, it's going to stretch more after you did that little stunt. And so then... zooming down the hall and over a couple of floors, we can just switch chapters. Unless you guys have anything more to say about Alviarin's...
Alviarin's whole plan is to create a hunt, to hunt down Elida. And I'm like, so you just want to do exactly what Elida's doing to you, only, Uno reverse it. That's your grand plan. It's not the worst plan. Right.
Uno reverse.
Yeah.
That's all I had about that chapter.
Yeah, so I remember, I can't be like, I remember distinctly what it was like reading this book for the first time, but I do have a sense memory of being like, almost like white-knuckled panting after reading that chapter because it was so surprising. And then flipping the page to this chapter, which is in its own way, not really horrifying, but super surprising. This is a great chapter.
And also, I love that she ends it with, I want to organize a hunt, and then swap to the hunt.
Yeah, totally. One of the hunters who's now being dragged in on a different mission. We are shifting to Chapter 22, One Answer, which has a generic Flame of Torvaldin symbol to get us going, because this is Eyes to Die, and as hard as Eyes to Die, ever Eyes to Die.
So what's the one answer?
I have no idea.
Yes. That was the answer.
Yes.
I think at the end, Pavara says yes.
I don't know. I genuinely don't know.
We'll talk about it and see if we can figure out.
Maybe we'll find it.
Because we're looking for a question, right? So
we'll have to find the question.
I think that the one answer to dealing with the Ashaman is that you have to bomb them rather than the answer.
That would make sense. Yeah, they're like,
this is
an impossible situation. There is one answer, and
okay,
yeah, okay. And this is interestingly, these two women are going to end up as roommates, basically, in captivity in the Black Tower, and the Tarna will end up being turned, and that will be what convinces Pavara she needs to go find an ally, when even the roommate she was hanging out with, who was on her side about everything, suddenly seems different. She's like, I gotta go talk to that Androl leatherworking guy, because this is not cool.
Yeah, she was like, yesterday Tarna was with me, like, we need to get the fuck out of here, and now she's like, oh, it's fine, we're fine.
Yeah, we're all good. Chill.
Yeah.
Smoke another joint and chill. It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, but here Tarna is rationally and in control of herself, deciding we need two bondmen, and only Pavara and a few other people are unconventional enough to hear her out on it. So we're having a very careful, feeling out kind of conversation between them. Pavara waited with a touch of impatience while the slim little accepted placed the rimmed silver tray on a side table and uncovered the dish of cakes. A short woman with a serious face, Pedra was not being laggard or resentful over having to spend the morning fetching and carrying for a sitter, just precise and careful. Those were useful qualities, to be encouraged. Still, when the accepted asked whether she should pour the wine, Pavara said crisply, "We will do for ourselves, child. You may wait in the anteroom." She almost told the young woman to go back to her studies. Pedra spread her banded white skirts in a graceful curtsy without any sign of being flustered, the way accepted often were when a sister showed snappishness. All too frequently, accepted took any bite in a sitter's tone as an opinion on their fitness for the shawl, as if sitters had no other concerns.
I feel attacked.
I know, right? I'm like, or maybe they just have rejection sensitive dysphoria, okay?
Well, I do like this little bit, though, that, because we've seen Aes Sedai so much from the accepted point of view, because we've been in Egwene's head and Nynaeve's head, and, sometimes it's not about them. Sometimes they're just having a bad day. Sometimes they just have, the Dark One back in their room. It's it's not about you. You're just you're just an accepted. You're barely even registering on the scale at this point of annoyance.
Though it is ironic that then the next paragraph is her thinking about how the young woman is in fact basically ready for the shawl. It's hilarious. Robert Jordan doing his favorite bait and switch reverse thing. Not bait and switch. Doing his favorite little reverse show what they're thinking versus what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Or what they're thinking versus what they're thinking in this case. And so her and Tarna are having a conversation. The wine is sort of, again, we're interrupting a scene. And the wine is something that her and Tarna are having. They're in Pavara's rooms. Tarna has arrived to have a conversation about mysterious things. And they both agree that Pedra is not bound for the Red Aja before they get on to talking about important matters.
And yeah, Pavara offers Tarna wine and congratulations for being raised. And Tarna's like, yeah, I couldn't say no.
Right. She's like, I really would like to not be the keeper, actually. But, politics or whatever.
She's like, I would not have hitched myself to Elida's crazy train willingly.
So how would you like to go on a secret field trip where Elida doesn't know where we're going? I don't know, tomorrow.
Yeah. She's like, I came back with urgency and a whole bunch of plans, and Elida kind of ruined. She threw a little monkey wrench in Tarna's very real plans that she had to come back. But also, I appreciate Tarna. I feel like everybody has a hashtag not all reds in Tarna's mind, because she's she's got a lot of problems, but she that they all do, but she's sort of like she doesn't really like she couldn't tell Elida no, because I feel like being the keeper is kind of like being the admiral, and if someone calls you to it, you can't say no. But she keeps everything kind of close and to herself because, you know, she's a quintessential red and like not going to make things awkward or, you know, talk shit about the Aja, but she's also kind of going to do what she wants or what she feels is the right thing, and not let, you know, quote unquote Aja loyalty or Aja optics have any like bearing on that, and I appreciate her for that.
I mean, she has to be turned, right? Like, she's not evil. She has to be forcibly turned.
Well, I mean, Elida's not evil.
Right. Although Elida does ignore her. So there's this interesting thing where Tarna is talking about how she sent this urgent message to Elida about the rebels and how they've got this giant army. You can go back to the prologue and you can see her just freaking out about the rebels and how organized they are and how the army is. And then you go see the message when Elida receives it and she's like, oh, yeah, whatever, and tosses it. And I just love that, like, Tarna is absolutely freaking out because she sees just how legitimate a threat is. And, like, you know, I've seen speculation. Oh, is somebody lying to somebody? What's going on? Why does Elida... It's like, Elida's too arrogant. She just doesn't think it can be a threat. She receives the report and dismisses it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Elida's, like, catastrophically arrogant, and she actually flat out says to Pavara that Elida sees what she wants to see, and so she doesn't even bother telling Elida any of the things that she brings to Pavara's attention, because she's like, you know, she's too politic to be like, there's no fucking point even wasting my breath with Elida, but she sees the world as she wants to see, you know, which Jordan has shown us all along with her. To our very first introduction, as Rand describes her knitting with terrible concentration as she's weaving something to her design, and it's going to be the way she says it's going to be, because that's her. And yeah, Tarna's not here for that. No,
but Pavara doesn't really trust Tarna, because Elida trusts Tarna, and Elida trusted Alviarin and Galena, and look how that's turned out. So, you know, there's a bunch of very justified suspicion that doesn't end up leading her anywhere, but she's very cautious of this whole thing, as she should be.
And also, Galena took an interest in Tarna, and she knows Galena is black. Yeah. Right? And she knows that Galena was taking an interest in this person. And yeah, Galena mostly took an interest in people who were going to be red. And so obviously Tarna being red, that makes sense. But she also took an interest in people who could have been black. And so, yeah, I do love that how much in the hunt for the Black Aja, Pavara's like, oh, this person could be black for these reasons, and that person can be black for these reasons, but she's almost always wrong.
Yeah.
Like, she never, if they are black, it's for the wrong reasons, and if they're not, it's, yeah. She, like, has all these suspicions about people doing things, and it's only through the actual testing using the oath rod that they find anybody who actually is black.
Yeah, she's reasonably smart, but she's not the best judge of character, though she does strike gold with Androl later.
Pavara, yeah.
But that's just luck that that's the person who happened to bond her.
Well, she goes to him. She's marked him out as seeming like a reasonable person.
Oh, that's right. She does. That's right. She sees him as a leader.
Yeah, he's a leader.
Yeah, it's kind of remarkable given how bad she is at figuring out people's motivations here. But I guess picking out leaders is different than picking out who is lying to your face.
Well,
I also do think Pavara is a slightly different person under Sanderson than under Jordan. The personality does change.
Yeah, a smidge, I suppose. So she also knows to pick her allies where she can get them, and she has very limited allies to choose from in the Black Tower, so I feel like it's reasonable, but I don't know.
She just gets lucky with that. Like, she doesn't have choices. Here in the White Tower, where she does have choices, she's consistently wrong.
And I find her a much colder person in these chapters. Much less familiar, much less willing to open up about herself. You know, I don't know how much that is just because she likes Androl, but she seems much more guarded, much more chilly in these chapters than in the later ones, where she's like having a good time with Androl.
Well, I would have expected her to warm up much more slowly over the course of a bunch of angst rather than shifting suddenly because a different writer is in control. Like, it's believable to slide from cold to warm, but like not as fast as it happens. But like, you know, of course she was going to change.
Trauma bond.
We do get her backstory reiterated here in all of its glory.
Yes.
With even more details about like how her brother died, and it's really sad. And it's another one of those just throwaway vignettes that Jordan's so good at doing, where in one paragraph he packs the entire beginning, middle, and end of an utterly horrifying, tragic story that could have been a 2.5-hour movie all unto itself.
And I'm willing to bet that backstory is the reason why Sanderson put so much into this character later on. Is like, oh, here's something interesting about this character that gives me a hook that I can take and run with.
Right. I mean, some hatreds never die meant that there was a core of a character that he could do whatever he needed to do with and not run out of steam on. Like, now she's powered by eternal hatred. She'll go.
And she was like the first hashtag not all red that Jordan gave us, really, where he was just sort of like, she's different from all of the other ones where I've been, you know, giving you all of these stereotypes, these cookie cutter reds. And so here's one that breaks the mold a bit.
I haven't even heard that you once said you would like to have a warder. Right? Like, the only red ever who expressed interest in a warder up to this point.
Yeah, and it's like, and I'm not a huge Pavara fan, honestly, because of her constant, even when all the other Black Aja hunters are like, yeah, raising Elida was a mistake, and Pavara's in the corner like, she needs to be given a chance. She needs to be given a chance. And when I was first reading this book, it didn't like resonate so much, and now it makes me want to push her down the stairs, but it's just because I've been living in this country for the last 8 years. So, but, you know, it's also like, believable as part, as being very loyal to her Aradia and partisan, and it's quite human, but it makes me not a big Pavara fan. So I much appreciate the hashtag not all red of Teslin, who's like, Elida did me dirty, and she can burn in the pit of hell for all eternity. How many petty things can I do to fuck her over? It's, important to show, especially because he went so hard from the beginning of, like, you know, the man-hating Aja being like, no, actually, they have to have nuance because otherwise it's just ridiculous. Here are people who, you know, actually join this Aja for other reasons, you know, and it makes sense that the Reds would have predominantly women who were suspicious of men. Ajas are going to recruit people who have their philosophies. They're going to seek out girls that are, you know, not interested in men, suspicious of men, you know, they're going to look for people like that, specifically like, you know, people become police officers if you know, like rules or are interested in authority or things like that. It's like, it's the type of job that attracts the type of person. But nonetheless, within that, there is room for nuance and exploration. And so having this being like, there are Reds who like men and Reds who are willing to work with men, and also maybe this is a higher purpose for us because, hey, men who can channel exist, and at this point this has gone too big. We cannot, you know, eradicate them or control them like we are used to doing, so maybe we need to, you know, take a page out of the Green Sisters books and work with them instead, which is revolutionary but also reasonable and realistic in a way that most Reds' worldviews is no longer reasonable or realistic.
It kind of reminds me of the question, does abstinence in the priesthood create pedophiles, or are pedophiles attracted to the priesthood because it protects them?
That I don't know.
And that's sort of my question with the Reds, right? Are people who are anti-men attracted to the Reds, or is there certainly, once you get there, you take on the prevailing attitude of the group?
It's probably a both and over the centuries.
I think it's both of them. I think that there's a reason that the Reds are the largest Aja. I feel like it's partly, you know, more people who are Aes Sedai are people who actually made the choice to go to Tarvalon and become Aes Sedai, and it's like, who chooses to do that? People who want something different from, a husband or a family. Well, why do they want those different things? And so you've got to think about the motivations that make someone decide to go to Tarvalon, and also like what life circumstances get in the way. So whether it's because, you don't swing that way, or you just aren't into men for a different reason because you don't trust them, or you don't want to do all of the mental and emotional labor as well as all the house chores as well, or whatever, you decide to go to the White Tower instead, and you get radicalized because of some really reasonable reasons that the Red Aja exists, into a much more, harsh and antagonistic philosophy.
I feel like we don't go into the reasons the Red Aja exists enough, right? This idea that why does life suck today? Men broke the world. How do we prevent that from happening? We need to have an organization that stops men who broke the world from doing it again. It is a selfless, noble thing to join the group that stops men from breaking the world. And I feel like that's something that's passed over a lot with the Red Aja. They're basically like, oh, we're men haters. And it's like, no, there's a legitimate reason for the Red Aja to exist.
It is logical to fear male channeling. That is a logical thing to do. It is a sensible thing to do. And for the most part, considering it's like, you have a thing where once you get to a point, you're a danger to yourself and to others, because it's like, being absolutely, having a psychotic break and, able to, push a nuclear button at the same time. That's not cool. That's a safety issue. And so it's one of those things, but it's like, you have to have people in that job who are going to be able to have a sense of an emotional detachment, who will be able to, because most of the men that they're going to deal with are not going to be, mwahaha villains, but pretty average guys who are going to plead and cry and are going to ask for mercy and are going to try to play on a person's emotions. And so you're going to have women who can't be swayed by that. And that is a necessary thing. I mean, it's sad and unfortunate. And are those women I want to go hang out with? No, they sound lame. But it's not like we don't need them.
And this conversation is coming at a particularly apt time, because right now the source was just cleansed. They don't know that, but that actually is a huge boon to them when they're like, what's going to happen when we bond men who are going insane? Well, they're not going insane anymore.
Right. That is the new paradigm that people are going to have to be coming to terms with. And to have the Reds being a part of that transition is the only way that they're going to survive as an identity group, right? I mean, that's a big part of what Egwene is pushing for, is like, I need you to step up to the plate to change and adapt with the tower the way you always have.
And I would have loved the information about the cleansing to get out, so the same conversation could have been had, with the idea that there's an even added pressure because now they're not going to go insane. Now they could become a competing force, and we need to control them and form an alliance of some sort.
Yeah, to have like a way to have the Black Tower aligned to the White in the way that, Egwene wants the Sea Folk and the Aiel as well, to have a spirit of cooperation so that, everybody feels like, we're all called upon to be held to account, that, we don't act like assholes or pursue our own power or, do unethical things. And instead, we all just kind of hold each other to a higher account.
Right. And I feel like that's not part of the conversation, because right now they're like, well, how do we deal with these men going mad? Well, if we bond them to control them, then when they go mad, we can exert some sort of control over them and prevent them from causing more damage. I feel like that's the undertones of what they're saying here. Like, we can't stop them by killing them, but if we bond them, we can exert some control. We can, it very much like channeling Saidar, right? They don't stand in the way of the path, they merely guide it. And that's what they're deciding to do with the Black Tower.
Yeah.
Right, and there's this idea of like, well, we don't know what's going to happen at the end, but better that we be the ones throwing ourselves on that grenade than anyone else, because that's what we do as Reds.
We're the Red Aja. We deal with men who can channel whatever dealing with.
We'll figure it out on the way down.
Right.
We're jumping off this cliff. That's just, we're done. We're doing it. And it's badass. I mean, I don't like Tarna. Tarna is definitely a hashtag all Reds. She's terrible. She's the kind of red that has no really sympathetic things, but like, this is rational. This makes sense. And it's not the move of a dark friend. It's the move of someone operating within a frame of reference that she's been operating with for a long time. And like, her whole thing about trying to come back from Saladar with dire news and seeing Ashaman in the field and doing the calculations on her own and running her horses into the ground on her own and making this whole trip on her own and coming back and getting brushed off by Elida, like, her world is kind of shaky at this point. There's some real existential like dread creeping in, and she is going to do what she knows how to do to make it make sense. And you know, she reaches out for assistance and finds willing assistance because it's rational. That's why Pavara goes along with it. She's not just unconventional, she's smart. And she's like, well, that does seem like a better use for my time than potentially getting murdered in my bed by dark friends I can't anticipate.
There's a conversation here where they're like, well, if they can send 6 men to one small village, which is what Tarna encountered, then they must be sending all sorts of groups all over the place. And just by, you know, simple multiplication, there's way more men than we could ever handle. Which I thought that information had gotten back to the White Tower through messengers, but I guess everybody's still sort of figuring it out on their own, in their own little ways.
But not at the time that Tarna got sent to Saladar. The Black Tower had hardly been made by then.
Right, Jesus. Things happen so fast with traveling that, like, someone can go, like, I'm going on a journey. I'm back from my journey. Okay, so the world's different now.
Yeah, and I don't think that the news of how big the Black Tower is widespread. I think like it was a secret message that got to one person and then to another person. So like it's not being shouted from the town square either.
But the important people all know about it.
Tarna's not important. She was out of the tower, and
right.
When she got back, she got elevated to a job she didn't want. Like no one's looping her in. I mean, I guess she is important because she literally got made into the Keeper. But yeah, news is just percolating very slowly and erratically compared to where we're sitting. And also, like, they weren't like Tarna couldn't anticipate that they had traveling, right? So she might have over-exaggerated how many black coats there are, but not by much, right? They are like Tame says that he's going to match the White Tower within a year, and he does pretty good on that promise. So, like,
yeah. Not what the White Tower is now with Egwene and all the recruits, but what the White Tower was when he made that pledge.
Yeah, she says that because Pavara is like trying to be non-committal because she's still feeling her out, and so she says that Elida thinks they can all be gentled. Tarna's response to that is when they can send 6 to one small village and travel, and at that point she's like, the only answer I can see is that we have to bond them as warders.
Which, like, honestly, I feel like trying to kill them and trying to manage them bonded, like, the math is bad either way.
Yeah, I don't know that it's the best idea, but I get that she doesn't have a lot of good ones, and so it's not the worst idea. It does seem like it's a way of going under that premise of being like, hey, you know, it's an offer of good faith because you're basically getting down in it with them at that point, and so it doesn't seem like gentling them is a good idea once you're bonded to someone. And so if the Reds decide that they have to do that, they have to do it at a potential cost to themselves and just be willing to go along with it. And I suppose any male channeler might assume that they wouldn't be willing to take on that cost. I'm not sure.
So as we get to the end of the chapter, I don't actually understand the very end of the chapter.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
I figured that one out for you, I think. I got it.
Awesome. So yeah, there's a note that gets passed around and it changes the whole world, and I don't understand the change.
This came from one of our agents in Kyriem, but it was sent by Tovane. Tovane is the group that was bonded by Ashaman and Logain. So this is basically them finding out, after talking about going and bonding Ashaman, they get a note that Ashaman bonded 51 sisters.
Okay.
Forcefully. We were just talking about bonding these Ashaman, and now we're getting information that they bonded us. This changes nothing, she said flatly. It only makes what I suggest more urgent. On the contrary, that changes everything. It changes the whole world. So this idea that Ashaman and Aes Sedai are bonded together, that's what changes the whole world. basically the change they were talking about creating has already happened.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what's profound, is that they didn't get to it first.
No.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. And of course, then Tarna's saying it's more important that we bond them because they have bonded us, and we need to balance that out. That makes it more urgent. Whereas Pavara's like, no, this changes the whole world, because now there's bonds between men and women, and all of a sudden, this is a whole new paradigm shift.
It's a colossal shit show.
Yeah, that too.
It doesn't really change anything practically. The plots still move forward as they do. But
no.
Yeah, the implications are different when you aren't making the first move. You aren't the first one doing it. Like, it's a reverse power thing of who's in charge. And also, it seems like that should have been your note to be like, maybe don't. Maybe this is going to go badly.
I think it goes well, though. I mean, this leads to the whole double bonding of Pavara and Andral, and, that can lead to a whole nother set of, like, magic systems, right? Because the bonding never existed in the Age of Legends. And so going forward in the Fourth Age, you have this new kind of double bond that creates basically telepathic people, right? And you can create a whole nother, and we know that power works best when it's created by both men and women. And if they can share each other's talents, each other's thoughts, all of a sudden you can have a man and a woman double bonded, and it's almost a new unit, a new kind of channeling that solves the problem in the Age of Legends, right? The whole problem in the Age of Legends that led...
All Lanfear needed was to figure out bonding.
Yeah. Double bonding, right? She didn't have to drill a hole in the bore. If she figured out double bonding, then men and women can use the same power, which is just the one power.
Oh that is hilarious that, like, women academics will literally bore a hole in reality rather than work on equal footing with a man. Like, if they literally just invented bonding and done double bonding, they would have gotten what Mierin, the not dark friend, was going for.
Not yet dark friend.
That's...
I don't even think she counts as a dark friend exactly. She's something else.
Yeah, for sure.
She's a narc friend. She's 100% narcissist.
Accurate.
Well, I always, dark friends are specifically pledged to Baalzamon, who is Ishamael, right? Dark friends are followers of a Forsaken, whereas I think other Forsaken are something completely different, and that's what, as well as Dreadlords. I don't think Dreadlords are necessarily, okay, that would to me be the difference between Dreadlords and Forsaken, because they're both evil channelers, but Dreadlords are dedicated to Shamael, whereas the Forsaken are dedicated directly to the Dark One. It's just a different level in the corporate hierarchy.
Right, because 3,000 years can distort some things. Things get lost in translation, only when one guy ever hangs around, like it's a branding thing.
It's a branding thing. But also, Ishamael was the one who kept popping up every 1,000 years to create that following of dark friends, right? So they are specifically following this guy who keeps popping up every 1,000 years or so.
I'm saying branding. You got to keep yourself in people's heads. You got to say the same thing over and over again until they associate that thing with you. Like, it's very simple marketing.
Also, have I just mentioned how biblical the fact that Ishamael is, and the fact that he pops up every 1,000 years for 40 years, right? 40 is always a very important number in the Bible. Lots of things happen in 40s. It's a very representative number. So the fact that Ishamael is back for 40 years is, again, just very, very biblical. How long was the flood of Noah? 40 days and 40 nights?
40 days in the desert.
40 years in the desert. Thank you.
40 years?
Yeah,
sorry.
It takes like...
Yeah, well, how should my heathen ass know that? My mom got us kicked out of fucking church when I was still an infant for questioning the minister in the receiving line.
It's because I've had to learn this stuff because Wheel of Time references it. I swear to God, if Wheel of Time didn't reference the Bible so not much, I would know a fraction of what I know about the Bible.
I mean, and then there's the entire, like, original sin on women that he just reversed for the taint.
Spadoinkle says I'm right, that Jesus was in the desert for 40 days, and the Israelites were in the desert for 40 years. So somebody was in the desert for 40 days.
Well, I'm much more interested in the Jewish history part than in the more recent, like, political whatever the hell went on with that mystery cult, dude.
Listen, I just get pissed off when people say Adam and Eve only had 2 kids. No, They had Cain and Abel, and Cain killed Abel, and then they had Seth. Seth was the third one. Everyone forgets about him, but that just a write off.
That's because Seth sucks.
Also, like, I'm pretty sure that healthcare being what it was back then, she probably had a whole lot more than 2 that just died before the age of 5.
Well, yeah, that's
also all the other people that sort of show up.
Right. Well, I mean, we can get the whole it's God created people and Adam and Eve were special, and anyway, it's a work of fiction.
Yeah, see, there's this original trilogy, and then there's this really weird fanfic that came out, which, like, there is a good musical of the fanfic. It's a parody of the fanfic of the original trilogy.
Yeah.
You know, it's complicated. There's some meta.
Right. I mean, we just don't accept it as canon, right? Like, we enjoy it. It's just not canon.
Seriously, though, the Book of Mormon, the musical, is hilarious.
I haven't seen it, and I really want to.
Very funny.
Oh, my theater-loving grandparents took us to see it, and, like, we all knew that it was made by the creators of South Park, but, like, we didn't really make sure my grandparents knew what that meant.
Oh, dear.
They walked out of that theater rather stone-faced. Oh, maggots in my scrotum!
Oh, fuck.
Wonderful.
That was fun. Is there anything else to say about this chapter?
I don't have anything else to say.
I just want to say, apparently the statue was on Hawaii, not Tremalking, and it didn't just burn down; it caught the whole island on fire.
Too soon. Too soon.
Sorry.
We'll be putting a link for donations to Maui relief in the episode description.
I was trying to transition to the Maui fire. Yeah, that was a poor transition.
Dude, as long as nobody's posting pictures of, like, rich white people finding their Rolexes in the ashes. God. Could you believe that shit?
I mean, I could, because I saw the clothes and the hair, but, like, oh my God.
Oh, of course. I was just sort of like, oh, look at this bright human interest story. And I'm like, you mean all of the actual, like, you know, island people who've lost all their livelihoods and are dead and shit, but yay, white people.
Or the part where, like, it's impossible to, like, find corpses when the fire's that hot because it destroys organic material too thoroughly.
I'm like, yeah, but hooray, which rich white girl found her Rolex? Fuck you. Yeah. Yeah, Sean, it's like the tourists posting pictures of swimming in the water the residents used to flee the fire. Yeah. Just...
Yeah. I'm so sorry, Maui. It's fucking terrible.
Yeah, if you wanna see the proper attitude of a rich person whose shit burned there, McFleetwood's restaurant burned there, and they're just trying to make sure that, you know, they're like, let's focus on the people who, like, live here and make sure everybody, like, you know, gets taken care of and gets their health care and shit. Yeah.
Yeah, the dojo that I trained with, there's a network of these dojos all over the West Coast, and some of the earliest ones were founded in Hawaii by the guy coming over from Japan and stopped in Hawaii, founded some dojos, and then came to Oregon and did more stuff. And their dojo has burned to the ground. And yeah, all the messages there are just like, we're just sending plus key, like, you know, it's just a building, whatever, like, you know, that's the closest it's come to touching me. I don't have any real connections to Hawaii, but it's a beautiful place that I love to talk about geologically, and it's been some pretty devastating pictures and responses.
Yeah, it's really heartbreaking, you know, having had bad fires here, but, like, not, like, it's such a small place, and it's sort of like, it was scary here in 2020 because, like, we got the level 2 evacuate, and since, like, we're in Portland, basically, just like suburb of Portland, but like where it was on the level of the river, almost where if it had jumped the river, they would have told us to go. So it's alarming when fire gets near urban areas. And
and the fast movingness of it.
Well, and I think what's particularly terrifying is when you're on an island, where do you flee to? You're on an island, right? It's like we're seeing these, videos of people surviving in the ocean because they're out of land, and like you just wade into the water and hope. To
be chased by a fire into the ocean has to be one of the most terrifying scenarios I can imagine.
Yeah.
It'd be like, because the ocean's deadly, the fire's deadly, right? Like, you just have to...
It's like when the fires in 2020 swept over Detroit, Oregon, and some of the people got caught there, and they had to run down and basically hunker in Detroit Lake for like 8 hours.
And watch the fire burn around them. And just
and basically, like, stick their nostrils out of the water. Yeah, that's just horrifying.
And hope the smoke doesn't choke you to death, basically.
Yeah, hope that you can manage to breathe long enough. Like, the fires we had in 2020, I was not near enough to any of them to be at an evacuation level, but there were so many different towns getting fucking edged off the map or just wiped off the map, and people there was waves of refugees coming up the I-5 corridor from the fires down in Ashland. Like...
and it's like, you never think about it, when you're young, about how quick fire can just spread. But it's like, you have like Oak Grove. It's this whole long road of oat field, and then the long oaks that get all dried out over the summer. And, the grass. I had somebody when I worked for the Coast Guard tell me that Oregon was the only place he'd ever been stationed where your grass is green in the winter and brown in the summer instead of the other way around. And so you look at as it all dries up, and especially that year as we were hearing more and more about the fires coming in, and I kind of looked down that whole corridor, and I'm like, this is a chimney, basically, and all it's going to take is one little spark, and all of these oak trees, it will just blow up this whole road. It can burn all of our houses down. It'll take out my apartment, and we'll be lucky if we can flee down to the Willamette and jump in time. It's terrifying. Yeah, when everything is dry, it's too fast.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah.
That's fun and scary.
Living in the woods is it's a thing. It's like I said before we got recording on, like, I recently replaced my roof with metal, and I'm really enjoying the cooling effects, but picking a fireproof material was part of the rationale, because even though we don't live in a piece of forest ourselves, like, we live in the woods, and if there is a fire, there will be burning shit falling onto our roof. So, like, we picked a material to make it easier to potentially survive having a fire come by, even if we've evacuated. Like, it's just shit you gotta think about.
Yeah.
A fire treating property when you live in the urban boundary is absolutely critical, and people need to be doing more of it, because fires are no longer theoretical. It's a matter of when, not if.
Yeah, and there's so many things you can do to, like, stop fire. Like, there's so many instances of, like, a few properties being saved because one property did its job and, like, broke the fire, and there's, like, an eddy behind it.
A little fire break.
Yep. It's incredible what the tiniest modifications can do.
A little fire break can make all of the difference. So it's just like, so it's just the little things. But yeah, fire's scary. And I feel bad for the people in Hawaii, because I wouldn't want to be on, especially with just the geology of it, because that's another thing is that people don't think about places that are flatter. Like, I had a friend from Texas move up here, and she drove past the street that she was supposed to go on, and she's like, okay, well, where's the next street I can turn down? And I'm like, you can't. She's like, what do you mean? She's like, in Houston, I could just go to the next street and turn down. I'm like, dude, you're going to have to go all the way down the street and, like, go around. You're going to have to go over a bridge. I'm like, you don't understand. This place is made by literally, like, volcanoes and rivers and, geologic forces. You can't just go to the next street and turn left. It's not how it works. And yeah, to be able to, like, get away from fire when the geology and the land works against you is just terrifying.
Yeah. So everyone, don't go to Hawaii. Send money and good thoughts, but leave your meat suit at home and fireproof your property.
Yeah.
And take care of your air quality. Stay hydrated.
Stay hydrated. Be safe.
Yeah. Stay hydrated. Stay cool.
Love your family.
Check in on your neighbors.
And reread Wheel of Time one more time.
Count your blessings. Have happy thoughts. And it's really good to see you guys.
It's good to see you too. It was really good to talk with you.
It's good to see you too, Morgan.
I had a good time with you last month.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the cons are always fun to get together in person, but there's such high pressure situations that, sometimes it's like, oh, I get to see you.
Our little rummy fest before going to the airport was really fun. Playing RummyCon was great.
It was.
With Ryan.
That RummyCon was good.
RummyCon, yep.
Yeah, his name was Ryan. I remember him. It was really cool. He came over and was like, hey, can I join you? And I'm like, wow, it's like school, only you're not afraid someone's going to tell you to fuck off because everybody's nice on purpose. Because that's the rules. It was good to see you too, Zool.
Yeah, it was great. All right, well, shall we stop recording on that happy note?
Yes.
2.5 hours?
Yeah, let's go ahead and stop on that.
We found a happy note.
We found a happy note to stop on.
Seth, I've suddenly become obsessed with wanting to put silly titles for our episode titles instead of just the chapters. Like, that last one that I published, I would have called it Emotional Blue Balls if that was our naming convention.
No reason you can't add it on now. I don't see a reason why we can't start doing it.
I've recently changed from having WoT spoilers in every episode title because it's goddamn redundant.
I did it for the algorithm.
Yeah, I've read that that's now not great. So these things change.
I can't. Things change in 6+ years of doing this.
So much has changed since I started doing this in the last 2 years. 3 years or 3 years. It's been 3 years. Right around when I moved. And that was in 2020.
Yeah, because you took over mid-2020. Yeah, wow, you've been doing this for 3 years. So wait, at what point have I been doing it longer with you than with Patrick?
Pretty soon here. Yeah.
Pretty soon, yeah.
You're right around our halfway day. Your halfway day with your co-host.
Because I think it was about 3.5 years that I did with Patrick, and you're on that about 3 years that I've been doing it with you.
Yeah, we were halfway through book 6, I think. So you guys are.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but we definitely slowed down quite a bit on the books. Like, we're doing longer episodes. In the beginning, we were publishing 3 episodes a week, sometimes 4.
Damn.
We were insane. We recorded twice a week, and we recorded 2 episodes at a time. And I did that so I could get out 3 episodes a week. Because I thought Monday, Wednesday, Friday, what a good release schedule. That seems like fun.
Isn't it amazing how we slow down?
I mean, it was fun for us. For sure. I enjoyed how quickly they came out because you were like what I did library work to. So
yeah, no, it was amazing. And some of those weren't that long. That's things we did half-an-hour episodes back then. So it's not necessarily that we're even producing fewer hours of content. Even though we're just producing longer episodes that come out less frequently.
I could split these into Monday, Wednesday, Friday releases, and we could get way more ad revenue, probably.
Right, for half hours. Talk to me afterwards. No, we would never do that.
When I started, I was all gung-ho to put out an episode every other week and really drove myself to distraction. And now I'm like, well, it's been 6 weeks and I might get my next episode out. It's just like the sense of urgency falls off after a while. You want to enjoy it. It shouldn't seem like work.
That's true. And as I feel like I also see the end approaching, right? Like, we are now far more than halfway through the series, right? We have completely finished book 9, finally.
Yeah, no, we're over halfway through the podcast.
Out of the 14 thing. Yeah. And we're 2/3 through the podcast at this point.
Unless, of course, we do swing back around so that way I can podcast through the books that I quote unquote missed at the beginning, in which case we're probably closer to halfway. But if we stop at the end, then we're 2/3. Right.
God, can you imagine going back around to the beginning? I don't even know how it,
Yes.
That should go back around and around.
I'm a Wheel of Time perpetual rereader. Yes. If you get tired, I'll just get another co-host. This carousel will just keep going.
That's honestly, I think what we should do is you and I should podcast through the point where Patrick left, and then I should leave, and you should get another co-host and just keep going around
keep
again.
Going until podcasts stop being cool.
And we just every time you get a new one, and then you can drop out, and that person can get a new co-host, and we just, keep the wheel of spoilers wheel going forever and ever.
My wife has figured out why we reread the way we do, because she's like, she has ADHD and doesn't remember stuff real well, so she wants to, the show's coming out in a week and a half, 2 weeks, and so she's like, well, I better go back and listen to the first 2 books before she listens to the third book. And so she's listening through the Dragon Mount prologue last night, and she stops it. She's like, I think I just figured this thing out, and she rattles off 2 or 3 things, and I'm like, oh yeah, and I'm like, now you know why we do it.
That's awesome.
I can't wait for Never to start her first reread. She's definitely stuck right before the ending of book 5, right? She's in that little spot in book 5 that sort of slows down a little bit right before the exciting conclusion. And I'm hoping at some point she'll get through the whole thing, and I'll be like, all right, now let's listen to Eye of the World again. And she's going to be like, oh my God.
So I have actually had the thought that what the next pass of What Spoilers podcast should be is doing someone's first reread specifically, and being there to be like, ask me anything,
their first reread,
and I will answer from the encyclopedic knowledge I have. We will give you the full What Spoilers encyclopedia of knowledge for your first reread. I feel I've had the daydream that could be a very fun thing to make someone's first reread a special experience.
So what is that? Are you just going to pull in Allie?
She is the person who maybe sparked the idea in my daydreams. Yes. I have no idea if that's...
Although I feel like it'd be better to pull in someone who read it casually, because I feel like she's already... By the time she gets to the end of it, she'll have analyzed the hell out of it so much more than someone who is a quote-unquote first-time reader.
Right. Well, and she has all of the What content creator stuff to get through, so it's Never's maybe a more logical model person for this daydream, because she is just casually reading it because she knows people who are into it, or just a series of people. I mean, it could be a fucking carousel of guests of just pick a chapter, pick a book, just it's your first time through, ask me anything. I got you. I will give you the all spoilers brain access, but you have to be a first time rereader. Make a whole nother specialized class. First
time rereader is such an not even, because I feel like someone who's finished it once is a broader category than first time rereader, right? Because most people don't stop at one reread.
And that's why maybe one person wouldn't be a good co-host, but just a sort of open couch policy of anywhere in the series, come at me with your questions as a person who's trying to get it for the first time with all spoilers out. It's a daydream I've spun around a few times. We were talking before this recording got turned on about heat check, because it's fucking hot here in the Pacific Northwest, and none of us like it. We are all marine mammals that like the lumber guardians and are afraid of the ball of fire in the sky. So this 100-degree weather is nonsense. Smoke quality is crap too.
I can always put on more jackets. I can't take off my skin.
You can't take off your skin.
No, you can't. You can't. You can exercise off some of your insulation, but that's a long process and heats you up in the short term and is not effective when one is actively boiling to death.
Yeah, I had someone be like, Morgan, what's your skincare routine? I'm like, I never go out in the sun. Avoid the light of day.
Yeah, no, it's
I'm
terrible.
a shut-in.
And yeah, it's smoky here, but not too bad. You guys are north of the fires, I'm west of the fires, so could be worse.
Which way is the wind blowing? Southeast?
The wind was blowing from the east, which is unusual and crappy, and that's why there's smoke out here. But it shifted back last night to a more westerly, normal pattern. So it's rolling back in towards the valley, much to the relief of everyone out here. But it hasn't been as bad as 2020. The new normal, not as bad as 2020.
Bright sides.
The new season called Smoke.
Yeah.
I mean, is it really new? I feel like that's our 2 seasons, is rain and smoke.
I seem to remember there being a nice season at some point when I first moved to Portland, but that's really gone away.
Rain is nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's still a rainy season. I don't know what you're complaining about.
What's wrong with
Yeah, warm and sunny. Warm and sunny.
When?
No, but, well, I don't know. It doesn't rain the way it used to either. We get these like cold winter days now.
That's true. We've had much drier winters, which is sort of weak because we need the water for the 3 months of the year when it doesn't rain. Because, yeah, everything's dry right now. We're literally in extreme fire danger where I live. Where, like, you're not allowed to look at the grass angrily because it might spark.
Yeah, Holger, San Francisco area is the one other place in the world I can imagine myself living. If only I could afford to. I think you need, like, financial aid. If you make less than $800,000 a year, you get, like, Section 8 there or something. But, yeah, I could live there.
I visited, my sister lives there, and I visited her, and yes, I go, so you're treating, because I don't make San Francisco money, because I don't live in San Francisco. Like, it's a different level of expensive that I've ever seen before.
Yeah, it's beautiful, though. I went there for vacation with my wife in 2018, and I was like, I've never before been anywhere where I was like, I could literally pick up and move here. Like most places, I just would never want to live anywhere else. But yeah, I could live there.
Well, I've said repeatedly, I've lived in enough places in the United States that if I were to move, it would never be inside the US again. I would stay in the Pacific Northwest, and probably in Portland.
Yeah.
Just because I'm a city guy and I can't see Seattle being my real location. So yeah, it's like, I know where I am, and it's not because, I grew up here and I never want to live anywhere else. It's no, I've lived everywhere else and I don't want to go anywhere else.
Yeah, my wife and I want to move to the coast, but let's talk about the Wheel of Time, maybe? I don't know.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?